The Resident Evil 4 remake follows on from the Resident Evil 2 remake and the, RE312 in taking the core of an older Resident Evil game and reimagining it and remixing it for modern audiences. Before I continue, full spoilers for both versions of Resident Evil 4. With revamped visuals, new knife mechanics, and the ability to both walk and shoot at the same time, the remake improved a bunch of things both big and small, making it one of the best video game remakes to date. My favourite change they made though is cutting a bunch of the original game out. Now, Resident Evil 4, the original, is probably in my top favourite 5 games of all time, or at least it was. I have played the game through dozens of times across maybe 6 or 7 different console iterations of the game, starting all the way back with the GameCube version back in 2006, not 2005, because I was very scared of horror games and it took my friend a long time to convince me to play it, but I'm very glad that they did. I'm saying all this because regardless of its flaws, I do want people to understand that I loved the original game regardless. But there were just so many moments that I dreaded when I actually got back into the game. And that's not because I was just too scared of any of the scary monsters. The prime example of this was just the island. I think everybody who remembers Resident Evil 4 well will know exactly what I'm on about. So many segments felt like padding, rooms full of armoured Ganados that would just both waste your time and ammo before you could move on to the actually next interesting moment. Or how about a boss that has basically no story build-up or significance that just chases you through a bunch of suspended shipping containers? Sure. Not everything cut in RE4 Remake is a winner, but it certainly feels very successful in its decisions, just like Resident Evil 2 did, and maybe Resident Evil 3 didn't so well. There are actually 3 smaller missions that do actually feel a little bit criminal to me, those being the laser room, of course, the fact that we don't get chased by a giant Salazar statue anymore, and then the fact that Salazar himself doesn't have a Trihorn hat. What's going on with that, even though his statue does? Sure, having no giant axes or fire-breathing dragon statues in the castle does take away from some of the goofy charm of the original, but it also just means that Capcom have cut out rooms that do feel a bit unnecessary to the pacing. Resident Evil 4 in my head always ran at a very fast clip, but then on replay I would have certain rooms that I'd wanted to forget about. When I get to the island part of the game, I want to see 3 things: regenerators, the Krauser fight, and the Saddler fight. But instead I am challenged with probably the longest section of the game, or at least it feels like it, with a tedious boss fight, a slow truck driving / defense sequence, and a big fight for a keycard that I never asked for. I always knew that the island was the weakest part of the game. After beating the Resident Evil 4 remake, maybe 8 times, the changes make it so clear that Capcom knew exactly what they were doing. Even the Krauser fight feels reminiscent of the original, while being much more streamlined and less frustrating. Capcom successfully found all of those rooms I wanted to forget that were a part of Resident Evil 4, and they either edited them down or just removed them completely, without ever making Resident Evil 4 feel like a lesser experience. In fact, it makes it a much stronger game overall. It's definitely not without its flaws. I was very upset to see a complete lack of Mercenaries mode when the game launched. Obviously, this was fixed within weeks of the game coming out. However, I do feel as though the Mercenaries mode didn't get as much love as it deserves. And then obviously there's the Assignment Ada / Separate Ways missions and story. It's possibly hinted that those are to come too, since the second Verdugo is completely missing from the castle and is no longer incorporated into the Salazar boss fight. And the fact that it's referred to as U3, U3 being the, I feel, unnecessary boss fight with the giant shipping container scene. So maybe those have been combined and saved for a DLC starring Ada, and maybe they're just not talking about that until the controversy around the actress calms down a little bit. Whether or not we do see Ada content or extra content in the future for this remake, it still made one of my favourite games of all time even better and more replayable. It's definitely not perfect, but they've taken one of the agreed upon greatest games of all time and somehow reimagined it to make it something better. So thank you, Capcom. And hey, if you like Resident Evil 4, you can check out my Twitch at Legend of Kanto, where I'm currently playing through the remake on Wednesdays, with maybe a cheeky guest appearance from Karl too. Thank you very much for listening. Have a lovely day.
Oh! What are you doing? You know better than to scare an old man what he's reading. Oh, what am I reading? Well, this right here is a book about our patrons and how they help to keep the channel afloat. There's clearly nothing in the mug, just try to ignore that. What, you'd like to hear an excerpt? Well, I can read out here the names of some of our fabulous VIPs who are helping to keep our channel running. Are you ready? Now, bear with me because these are Nisha's glasses and, well, they're quite hard to see through. Chibisa Matawere, Nix, Brina Lawless, Zed Xanomaly, Baba P, Matt Gilbert, Kim Geisler, Doug Snooglis, Michael Garavati, Michelle Holloman, Onyxia, Ultra Nerd 257, Lyndon B. Johnson. I somehow missed Amy Brundridge. How terribly sorry I am. Maxwell Steese, Dandely, Darth Turkey 28, Wesley Dyer, and finally, Anders Lee. If you haven't heard your name there, but you're on the VIP tier, it'll be in one of the other videos with one of these other ridiculous premises. But I just want to offer a big thank you if you stuck with us this long, and enjoy whatever videos come next.